The good news is BYU got a massive upgrade for their defensive line with Justin Kirkland's commitment. The bad news, though, is BYU apparently now has to rebrand as Tamper U.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On Cougars, your original daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. I'm Jake Hatch, resident BYU expert and insider. I am the executive producer of the KSL Sports Zone in Salt Lake City and a 13-year credentialed BYU media member. And as always, thank you to all of you who are everydayers with us right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where, of course, the motto is your team every day. All right, let's dive right into today's show. We're going to talk about BYU's transfer portal haul coming out of football and basketball. Justin Kirkland on the football side of things, bolstering BYU's defensive line. In basketball, BYU gets a commitment from Tyler Miras out of the University of Idaho as a sharpshooting wing player that should round out a big part of BYU's bench rotation. And then we'll finish up today's show talking about what you want to talk about with our Locked On Cougars Insider Group Q&A that we do every single week here on the podcast. All right, so right out of the chute, BYU gets a massive commitment in Justin Kirkland. And massive both figuratively and literally. This is a man's man out there, everybody. He's a 6'3", 330, 340. Some people say even he's 350 pounds. He is a large human being, and he is committed to BYU. He and Keanu Tanuvasa probably are going to make up the best defensive tackle tandem in quite some time. I think the next best defensive line I can think of off the top of my head goes all the way back to the 2020 season. Remember, they had three guys. It was a three-man alignment mainly that season with guys like Zach Daw and obviously Kairos Tonga plugging up the middle and the front line for BYU in that defense. It was a really stout defensive line. It was a big reason why BYU had success that year on defense. This tandem featuring Keanu Tanuvasa as kind of that three-technique defensive tackle, and what you'll have in Justin Kirkland, he plays more of a traditional nose tackle role, are two behemoths who are freakishly strong, freakishly athletic, and it belies their size, and they are going to make life absolutely miserable for opposing offenses, particularly opposing offensive lines. If you're a BYU defensive end, a linebacker, cornerback, or safety right now, you are thinking you're lucky stars right now to have a defensive tackle tandem like those two. And the best part is there's guys behind them to provide depth. Anisi Purcell, a transfer in his own right, in from Southern Utah. You look at Sani Tuwala. You look at John Talmoya Peau. There is a lot to like about BYU's defensive tackle unit suddenly. And it sure feels like it's become a major strength on paper for this BYU defense when there were some pretty big question marks about it going into the offseason when you lost your star two guys in John Nelson and Blake Mangelson. I love me some John. I love me some Blake. But I'm telling you, they got by as being undersized defensive tackles. That is no longer the case here. You got Keanu Tanuvasa, who tips the scales at more than 3 bills himself. And then Justin Kirkland, who's a good 330 plus. That's more of what BYU wants in their hog mollies up front on the defensive line. They want true space eaters, but more importantly than that, guys who have proven themselves at a high level. And both of you guys have that in spades. Justin Kirkland played in all 26 games the last 2 seasons for the Oklahoma State Cowboys. And yes, Oklahoma State fans are out there crying foul, and we'll dig into that momentarily. But the bigger point to be made here is this is a guy who his stats belie what he actually does on the football field. He has 40 tackles, I think, over the past 2 years for Oklahoma State. And you're thinking, well, that's not a lot of production. That's not his role as a defensive lineman, particularly a defensive tackle. As a defensive tackle, it is a thankless job. It's much like playing offensive line. You are a nameless, faceless human being out there who your whole goal and what you're supposed to accomplish is to take as many blocks as possible and free up your teammates to go make plays. It really is. You toil in anonymity, and I use that term a lot, but that's exactly what it is. When your name is heard, usually you've committed a penalty, and that is both the joy and the glory doesn't really exist for a defensive tackle like Justin Kirkland, but he is a critical cog in this BYU defense, and will make this BYU defense that much better than it was even a season ago. Think of the linebackers BYU has, Jack Kelly and Isaiah Glasker, the first two I can think of off the top of my head because they are the best two. They were absolute dynamite last year. Imagine what they will accomplish with guys like Keanu Tanuvasa and Justin Kirkland clogging up the middle and taking on double and triple teams, thereby freeing up less linemen, not allowing as many linemen to get up on blocks in the second level and keep those guys, use the term clean. It is going to be an absolutely awesome scenario to have those two in the middle for this BYU defense. Justin Kirkland's a Roy High School product, wanted to come back closer to home. He is married. He's a returned missionary for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He served that mission after going to Roy, then played a year at Utah Tech, and then spent the last 2 years at Oklahoma State. He has 1 year to get it right here, and he's coming to BYU, and he is fully intent on making the most of his time as a Cougar. Now, to the point about certain fan bases, Oklahoma State chief among them, only some Oklahoma State fans out there, though, are complaining about us crying, using the term tampering. I'm using air quotes. If you're listening to this, the audio format, but on YouTube, I'm using air quotes. Tampering does not exist, everybody, at least in the sense that these opposing fan bases and so-called insiders, I cannot believe for the life of me. Okay, Utah fans, you guys know so much about BYU sports. I'm going to let you host this podcast, and because you apparently are the insiders who know everything there is to know about BYU sports. I'll cede the crown right now because apparently they know everything that I do not know about BYU sports. But the bigger point is, if Oklahoma State wants to file a tampering charge against BYU, go right on ahead. The issue is, if Oklahoma State does pull through with that, they will have to obviously answer for their own tampering. I had one member of the Oklahoma State media corps out there, I'm not going to name them because they did not authorize me to name them in this circumstance, who said, I cannot believe that Oklahoma State is considering any such things or levying such tampering charges because they're doing it too. Utah's doing it. Utah State's doing it. The Cougars are doing it. The simple fact of the matter is, we don't have Kalani Sitake and these coaches sidling up to these young men in meetings after games and the like and saying, hey, son, I'd like you to come play for us at X university. That's not how it's happening. They have agents, speaking to a lot of these players, and they have family members. And guess what? There are communications that are not going directly to these players, but are working through what you call back channels. And that's how a lot of this gets done. So if you want to levy tampering accusations, go right on ahead. But as I understand it, talking with some media members out there in the Oklahoma City area, covering Oklahoma State, they said that if Oklahoma State wants to levy a tampering charge, go right on ahead. Remember how Utah levied those tampering accusations via some of their media members the day that Zacharias Williams, their star wide receiver, entered the transfer portal? Yeah, that was a bit of a cover to cover up the fact that your star receiver was bolting your program. Did you see ever more reporting about, hey, Utah actually filed tampering charges against BYU? No, you did not, nor will you see that. Because the simple fact of life is, if you are going to file those tampering charges, guess what? The skeletons in your closet that BYU or other universities have immediately get exposed. It is all brinksmanship. I'm going to use the nuclear war analogy here once again. We always hear about, hey, we have receipts. Expose those receipts, because guess what? Then your receipts get exposed. Your skeletons, as I said, in your closet get exposed. It will always be saber rattling. It will always be like, hey, we're gonna get these guys. Great. Everybody wants to say that about that. And I'll also say this: BYU, you have made it. You should be celebrating this fact that you are now persona non grata in the Big 12 Conference. You have officially become the big dog in the conference because everybody else wants to talk about you. You have 3 universities this year already who have accused you of tampering: Baylor, Utah, and Oklahoma State. Who else wants to join the party? Can you tick off the rest of the other, I guess in this case, 12 other teams? Do they want to join this tampering accusation? Go right on ahead, because that means that BYU is doing something right, because everybody else is jealous of you. And the other side of it is BYU is having success. Yes, BYU's got money to spend. That is absolutely an undeniable fact. NIL is above board. It's part of the rules. BYU's playing by said rules. And guess what? People cannot handle that fact. We heard from years from a certain university 40 miles north of Provo that BYU was a poverty program. When was the last time you heard that accusation levied? Oh, now they have too much money to spend. go right on ahead. The good news is if you're a Cougar fan out there, celebrate the fact that in my mind, as your host here on the podcast, BYU has absolutely made it because everybody else is jealous of little old Brigham Young University. I love the fact that Justin Kirkland's coming home. He's a Utah boy, and BYU tried to get him when he left Utah Tech for Oklahoma State. Couldn't pull it off then, but all's well that ends well, and he ends up as a BYU Cougar. And if it comes with the tampering charges, hey, rebrand BYU as Tamper U and continue winning on the recruiting trail. All right, coming up next, we're flipping over to BYU basketball recruiting. Tyler Meares officially made it official that he's going to be a BYU Cougar. What does he offer to Kevin Young and company? Well, it sure feels really good about it, and we'll talk about that next right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Supply House. Now, a lot of us out there maybe don't work in the trades, but if you work in trades, whether it's plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. I work in a media sphere, obviously. I've got a brother who works in the trades, and Supply House is the answer for those who do work in the trades. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service. You'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free TradeMaster program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it is your turn to do just that. Join the TradeMaster program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Once again, that's supplyhouse.com/TM to get started today. Plus, use the promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Using the promo code SH5 for 5% off your order today. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Hope you have a fantastic Friday. Whenever you hear this, I am fired up because BYU basketball got another big-time commitment with Tyler Meares joining the BYU basketball program. Surprised that Idaho Vandal fans aren't all up in their feels about him leaving the Idaho. No, here's the deal. The transfer portal, it's a give and take thing. BYU lost guys this year in the transfer portal, but obviously they have taken back a lot of their own, and Tyler Meares is the latest for the BYU basketball program. We talked about him earlier on this week. If you're a Locked On Cougars, not an insider group member, if you're just a Locked On Cougars everydayer, you can just remember that we did a podcast when we talked about him extensively. He's 6'7". He's long, he's lean, and he shot the three at an extremely high level last year for the Idaho Vandals. This is a kid who started out his career at the Division II level, playing for Alaska Fairbanks up there in the Great White North. Then transfers to Idaho. Actually had a medical redshirt his first season at Idaho after playing just a couple of games. Then this past year bounces back, as I said, with a 38.2% three-point percentage. That's exactly what BYU envisions for him. And then, in fact, I think BYU is probably envisioning him shooting at an even higher clip because of the weapons BYU will surround him with. He should have plenty of open looks. Imagine a guy like Tyler Meares is probably looking at BYU's lineup saying, okay, AJ DeBonce is over there. Richie Saunders is there. I'm going to go post up in the corner over here. One of those two guys is going to try and make a play. And if it doesn't work out, they very well may get double teamed. They'll kick it out to me. And all I'm going to do is make it rain on opposing teams' heads. That is an absolutely awesome scenario to envision. I think every one of you watching and or listening to this podcast can see that scenario playing out. Kevin Young will play games with opposing teams' lineups, and the guy like Tyler Meares is going to benefit from that in a big way because at 6'7", he's got the length, obviously, to play on the wing and be a mismatch in terms of a smaller guard trying to guard him, where he might be able to bully them inside. But if he is on the outside and shoots 38+%, that's great. BYU is going to have an ability, once again, like they did last year, to really make things miserable for opposing teams. I think BYU's other thing they're trying to do with guys like Tyler Meares joining this roster is they want to make it as deep a rotation as possible once again. I think Kevin Young realized something last year, is that if he has enough guys, you can play a 10, 11, 12-man rotation and absolutely wear out opposing teams. You can throw different lineups at different teams. If a team comes in with a 5-out alignment where they don't have anybody that tall, guess what? BYU can counter that with their oversized wings, because AJ DeBonce, Richie Saunders, and a guy like Tyler Meares, the shortest guy is Richie at 6'6". AJ DeBonce is 6'9". Meares is 6'7". There are very few teams out there that can match the size BYU can throw on the court. And you added a Keba Keita out there. It looks like BYU is going to toy with some of these lineups this year. Now, when you get into Big 12 play, the likes of Houston, et cetera, they will make you work for it. But I think BYU learned a lot about themselves. And with the upperclassmen coming back, and in this case, Tyler Miras, he's got Division I experience, and he's going to be an upperclassman. He'll be a junior, so he's got 2 years of eligibility remaining. So he's got time to continue to develop within the BYU system. And I expect that, yeah, he may not be a heavy rotation guy, maybe early on the season as he gets his feet wet at the Power 5 level. But the one thing I like about him is he has shown an ability to jump from the D2 level, produce at a high level now at the G5 level, and now take the next step and jump up to the Power 5 level and see what he's capable of. He is a guy that you can tell is excited to be a BYU, made a visit, made a very quick decision to commit to BYU. And I had I had some communication with him. I reached out to him and said, hey, is there anything you want to pass along to BYU fans? What was his response? Let's go win a natty. Speaking of the national title. So there's some confidence there. This BYU roster is shaping up very nicely for year 2 of the Kevin Young era, and for good reason. He's done an absolutely marvelous job in the transfer portal. And yes, once again, NIL comes into play. BYU is spending a pretty penny on adding some of the talent they've added to this roster. Robert Wright III didn't come cheap. A guy like AJ DeBonsa is legendary for how much BYU is alleged to have been spending on him in NIL. But the thing is, look at this roster and tell me it is not one of the best rosters in BYU basketball history. Yeah, there are some from the 80s that featured multiple NBA players out there, but in recent memory, it might be the best roster top to bottom, and there's still roster slots to go here for BYU, even with Tyler Miras' addition, that BYU can make this an even deeper and more versatile lineup than it already is. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I still think the remaining needs for BYU are a true defensive stopper, a point guard that can really run the offense is the number 2 behind Robert Wright III. And then ideally, the one thing I look at most is another big man. And he needs to be a rim protector. That's the one thing about this is I feel like BYU once again, needs to have a big-bodied big man, and that might be Xavier Staten. He may surprise us when it comes to workouts because he and AJ DeBonsa are already enrolled in school and working out. That's cool to see. And the nice part is they're going to have plenty of time to learn BYU schemes, work out with their teammates, practice with these guys, and they should hit the ground running once training camp comes around in the fall. But the bigger point to be made is I think there are 3 key things BYU still needs to find. That is, like I said, a big man who can be a true rim protector for that second unit. I think a point guard to relieve a guy like Robert Wright III's absolutely a big need. And then if I can get a third thing in there, a stopper. Remember, Mawit Mag last year, he took on the opposing team's best big and really locked them down. Some people have told me they think Kennard Davis Jr., who committed earlier this week as well out of Southern Illinois, they believe he's got that capability to be that stopper. But Kennard Davis Jr. is also a really, really talented offensive player. And we'll see if he is able to hold up on both ends of the court. The bigger point to be made here is that Tyler Miras, he only deepens BYU's roster. He's got experience. He's got time on his side in terms of continuing to develop with the BYU basketball program. And it's a win-win-win all the way around in this edition for the BYU basketball program. Kevin Young is proving just time after time that he is a relentless recruiter. And more often than not, when he goes out there and identifies a guy that he wants at BYU, he gets them. Yes, NIL speaks a big thing. Money does talk. But more importantly, guys who want to play basketball at a high level, they want to win and they want to know what their role is going to be. They want to know what BYU can offer to them. And Kevin Young now has that proof of concept they can throw out there. He can throw on the film and say, hey, look at what a guy like Jaeger Demon did in this offense. Look at what we envisioned for AJ DeBonsa alongside you in this offense. Richie Saunders became the most improved player in the Big 12 under our tutelage. He's a first-team All-Big 12 honoree because of what he accomplished in this system. That sells a whole lot more than even I think NIL money might in certain circumstances. Yes, money talks. Absolutely. We cannot ignore that fact. But guys want to be in situations where they're going to succeed and, more importantly, where they're going to win. I think Tyler Miras understands that. And BYU, I think this roster is shaping up to be absolutely electric, elite, and, dare I say, championship material? We'll see what happens. But Kevin Young's chasing it all. He wants the glory. He wants the hardware. And if you're a Cougar fan, get excited because it sure looks like he is building BYU into something special this coming season. All right, we're going to finish up today's show with your questions. Obviously, our Locked On Cougars Insider Group, we do it every single week with our mailbag. We'll get to them. It's overflowing today, and I can tell you there's some good ones in there. And we'll get to those next as you wrap up this edition of Locked On Cougars. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. If you have not done so already, what are you waiting for? Join the Locked On Cougars Insider Group and get the inside scoop on all things BYU sports. Let's just put it this way. You would have known that Justin Kirkland was going to be a BYU guy as early as Tuesday this week if you're an Insider Group member. The hundreds of members who are already in there can attest to it. I am passing it along. It comes to your phone in the form of a text message. You're not having to sign up on a message board or go to a website to get the inside intel. It comes directly to you on your phone. You can fire back with thoughts of your own via text message, have one-on-one conversations. Just $5 a month, $4.99 in fact. So $4.99 a month. And the best part is you get a 2-week free trial, 14 days before you're charged a single penny. So join us today on the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. Link is in the show notes below, whether you're watching this and or listening to it. So join us today and check it out, the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. All right, before we go on today's show, let's get to the questions from our Insider Group members. And I will freely admit, there are, as of counting of this podcast as a recording, because you're just going to come in after I get done, I now have 37 questions in this mailbag right now. Can I get that many? We'll see. Let's start off. First one, Andy Stallings. Is Justin Kirkland going to be a senior? Yes, he will be a senior. He's got 1 year to get it right at BYU. Other questions here from our listeners. Preston asked this. Good question here. Hey, Jake. I'm sure you are aware of Retzlaff talking about wanting to be a Heisman contender this season. Yes, we did a full podcast on it. What is the number one thing you think he needs to improve on to get there? Touchdown to interception ratio. And that's something that Aaron Roderick has highlighted. If he goes 3-1, so we're talking like 30 touchdowns against single-digit interceptions, that is going to raise BYU's level. He was 20-12. Speaking of 20 touchdowns against 12 interceptions last year, that's 2 to 1.2. If he goes 3 to 0 point something, that means BYU scoring a whole lot more touchdowns in the passing game, thereby winning a lot more football games. And oh, by the way, Heisman voters love big plays through the air. So that's what I think he needs to work on. Now, completion percentage is the other thing I think he needs to pay attention to. Kent, this is a good one from Kent, talking about the Justin Kirkland deal. Here's my prediction. We hear from Mike Gundy saying how bad, speaking of Justin Kirkland, he was, and they hadn't even made the team. We'll hear that from the Utes. Well, it looks like another one got away, but he's probably not that good, unquote. You know what? These fan bases want a bellyache all they want. The good news is BYU's getting all of the attention. That they think that they're stealing attention away from BYU, but all they come off is petty, small, insignificant. And once again, if there was legitimately going to be, those tampering charges levied, wouldn't we have reports of that already? Yeah, we would. It's not going to happen. All right, other questions here. What offseason storyline are you most excited to follow? The transfer portal, Matthew. That comes from Matthew. The transfer portal. How much more can BYU add for both the football and basketball programs? Now, if you want other storylines, I'm tracking how BYU continues to develop with the football program because they want to be a Big 12 title contender, if not the winner of the Big 12 this fall. BYU basketball aspires to do the same thing in the winter. That is the tracking them getting ready for that. And obviously getting inside intel on that. I'll be sure to pass it along to our Insiders Group members. And I really do think the BYU is set up to do some really special things this year. Another good question here from John. Who would your starting five be on an all-historic BYU men's basketball team? Ooh, this is a good one here. Jimmer Fredette, number one. Kresimir Chosic, obviously, he's got to be in that mix as well because my grandpa and my dad raved about him. Travis Hansen is my two guard. 3 and 4. Give me McKelly Wesley. I loved McKelly. I think he'd be a true 5-man where you kind of push Kresimir Chosic to that 4 spot. And then, another guy to great old timers. Danny Ainge. Yeah, I'm not going to overthink this. Danny Ainge. Now, he also asked this. Who would you replace yourself in that lineup with? I'm going to be the 6th man sitting over on the bench. That's what I'm going to be doing. I'm not replacing myself in that lineup. There's no way. If you were going to put a gun to my head, I guess McKelly Wesley, but even then, I no. All right. Weston, with the recent transfer portal additions, how would you rate BYU's defense for the upcoming season? Well, they were top 40. Don't quote me on that. Might be top 30 last year. This is top 25 quality. That is how good this defense could be with these additions on the defensive line in particular. That defensive line had massive question marks last year, and they answered them in a big way with guys who frankly overachieved. And I love, like I said, I love Blake Bangleton. I love John Nelson, Tyler Batty, Isaiah Banya, but they were undersized guys outside of Batty really, and they really overachieved with true, like legit what you want, prototypical size defensive tackles and the like. How much better could this be? I think top 25 is absolutely like you've got to be a top 25 defense in that. What QB are they interested in? Coming from Rick. I think BYU is interested in any QB they think can elevate that room. So there's been a lot of talk out there about a guy like Bear Bachmeier, who's a former 4-star prospect who recently left Stanford. BYU did recruit him out of high school. There's also maybe a tandem deal with his brother Tiger, who is a wide receiver. We'll see what happens on that. We'll see. But I think the bigger thing for BYU quarterback-wise is they're not in a position where they have to have a quarterback. They want to find the right quarterback. Hopefully that makes sense, but it's got to be a quarterback that can elevate them. And I think they're doing their due diligence on any guy in the mix out there in the transfer portal. Tyson, this is a good question. Do you have any reservations about BYU basketball's new, quote, win now, unquote, mentality? I'm very excited about the 2025-2026 season, but I don't see any obvious plan beyond that. Well, let's put it this way, Tyson. All they do is going to reload. Yeah, you're going to have obviously guys like Richie Saunders, Dawson Baker, AJ DeBonsa, who are going to exit this program after the season. But a guy like Tyler Mears, who we've talked about on this podcast, he's got another year in the system. I don't think he's intent on leaving BYU after just one season. He wants to grow with the program. Yeah, Keba Keita will move on. Well, Xavier Staten then moves maybe into that role after a year's worth of seasoning. There's a plan there. And the other thing about this, trust Kevin Young. He wants to obviously win and win now, as you mentioned, but at the same time, his recruiting chops have proven that he can bring in mass qualities of talent. So I'm not concerned right now at all about a plan or win now. Win now and make up the rest later, because you've proven you can go out there and do some really cool things in transfer portal. Travis, what exactly is NFL free agency, and did Connor Pay have that opportunity, or what is he up to now? Travis, Connor did get an opportunity. He's headed to a rookie mini camp with the Las Vegas Raiders, considered essentially a tryout with the Raiders. It would have been awesome to see an undrafted free agent deal. What those are, like what Tyler Batty got, is gave you a little bit of money, and you are assured of making it into training camp, but nothing beyond that. You have to earn everything you get beyond that. Connor doesn't have that. And obviously that tryout with Vegas is going to be critical to his chances maybe getting an undrafted free agent deal. We'll see what happens there. But I really do think that Connor, he's going to surprise the Raiders, and I hope he goes out and absolutely shines. I really do think it's awesome. Let's see. Other questions here. Will NIL for football be willing to pay for the best athletes that are members of the church like Lions, or would they be better off financially and for an NFL career somewhere else? And why can basketball guys get what football can't? That comes from Robert. Let me put it this way, Robert. As I understand it, BYU's NIL is actually fairly equal for basketball and football, but think about the roster sizes. Football, if they implement the house rules, the house settlement rules, that'll be 105 men. Now, that's obviously subject to change because the judge is holding it up because she does not want to see those roster cuts made. And then in basketball, it's 15 to 17 guys. You can invest a whole lot more money in just one or two guys in basketball who can have an outsized impact on your success in basketball versus football, where you've got to invest in what? Minimum, probably 30, 40, 50 guys. And the money gets obviously cut down much more. The pie gets a lot smaller in that circumstance. BYU will pay money for top tier talent. Okay. You don't think that a guy like Justin Kirkland's coming to BYU out of the goodness of his heart? No, he's going to get paid in addition to playing for one of his hometown schools. He is making money in NIL. There's just zero doubt about it. BYU has got cash, and they will splash it on guys that BYU wants. It's just a difference in the overall size of the roster, and the mass amounts of money are different in that respect. Hopefully that made more sense than I feel like I may have convoluted it a little bit here. All right, man, I got so many questions here. I apologize. I'm not going to get to even a third of these things. Okay. We'll finish off with this. This is This is a great question because it's off the beaten path. It's not football or basketball or even BYU sports related, but Landon, you get the final word here. Can you rank these fry cuts? Steak, curly, potato wedge, shoestring, waffle, tots, and crinkle. All right. At number 1, give me a curly fry. At number 2, shoestring. I think shoestring's like what I get at McDonald's. That's probably it. I'm a curly guy, then shoestring. Number 3, give me a potato wedge. Number 4, waffle fries. Number 5, tots. Number 6, steak. And number 7, and bring up the rear because they're not very good, crinkle French fries. My wife loves crinkle French fries. I cannot stand them. There you go. So there you go. That's my fry power rankings, I guess is a good term for it, but that's going to do it. So we'll sign off now. Hey, I may do another episode and answer all the rest of these questions. There's some really good ones in there. I didn't even get to, like I said, a third of them. So thank you. Truthfully, thank you for all the support. We've had an absolutely electric week, and it doesn't feel like the news cycle is slowing down anytime soon for BYU. The transfer portal, you know what? It giveth and it taketh, and the good news is either way, it's content for this podcast, and we will discuss it all along the way. But as always, thank you for your support of the podcast. Please subscribe, rate, review, share with your family and friends. Let them know that this is BYU-centric content every single day, and that they can have it available wherever they get their podcast, or check it out on YouTube as well. But as always, I like to say this all the time, thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. And as always, once again, thank you to all of you who are everydayers right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.